Welcome to the Explainer. So let's jump right into it. Today, we're looking at something literally massive. For almost a century, the whole world practically hits pause every 4 years just to watch two teams battle it out on a grassy pitch. But, beyond the cheering crowds, the roaring stadiums, and the iconic trophy lifts, there's actually a fascinating, almost mathematical rhythm to this whole global phenomenon. We're going to peel back the layers of all that emotion and dig into decades of historical soccer data, winners, runners-up, scorelines going way back to 1930, all to uncover the hidden patterns of the World Cup final. I mean, it's incredibly easy to get totally swept up in the passion of the world's biggest sporting event, right? But what happens when we strip all of that away? What can the cold, hard numbers truly tell us? Well, if we look really closely at the data spanning nearly a century, from 1930 all the way to today, some pretty wild patterns start to emerge. We see dynasties rise and fall. We see the actual fabric of the game's tactics completely evolve. And we even see human psychology quantified in ways you probably wouldn't expect.
But before we really get going, I want you to hold on to a number for me, 6. Just tuck that in the back of your mind. It's a crazy stat from that wild 2022 final that perfectly captures how modern football has evolved, and honestly how it sometimes completely shatters its own trends. It's kind of like a little mystery we're going to solve later on in this explainer. But for now, let's look at exactly how we're going to break down all this data.
All right, here's our roadmap for today. 1. The kings of the pitch. 2. Tighter scores and penalties. 3. Rivalries and home advantage. 4. The greatest final ever. And finally, 5. The ultimate power index. So let's kick things off with Section 1. The kings of the pitch, global dominance. Let's start by looking at which specific countries absolutely dominate when the pressure is at its absolute highest. Out of all the nations on Earth, who actually steps up when it matters most? Now, what's really interesting here is the contrast between reaching the top of the mountain and actually planting your flag there. Take Germany, for example. They have a staggering 8 final appearances. That is an extraordinary level of consistency. Yet, it's Brazil who has that unmatched closing power. They've converted 7 appearances into 5 championship titles. Italy and Argentina follow really closely behind, while France has been incredibly efficient, turning 4 finals into 2 titles. But think about Germany's journey again. The data also shows the true heartbreak of being the runner-up. They've lost 4 separate finals, which is the most in history. Ouch. Now, if we zoom out from those individual countries to entire continents, we see this fascinating geographic duopoly. Like literally every single World Cup winner in history has come from either Europe or South America, no exceptions. But the numbers completely bust the myth of total European dominance. Europe has 12 titles, right? But South America has 10. When you consider that Europe has far, far more competing nations actually entering the tournament, this nearly 50-50 split shows just how staggeringly powerful South American football history really is. The competition is incredibly balanced.
Moving on to Section 2. Tighter scores and penalties, the tactical shift.
So, okay, we know who makes the finals, but how are they actually playing once they get there? Well, the data tells a very clear story of a massive tactical shift over the years. In the early decades, we're talking 1930 to 1970, fans were treated to an average of about 4 goals per final. That's a lot of action. Think back to 1958. Brazil beat Sweden in an absolute 7-goal thriller, winning 5-2. But from 1974 to 2022, that average absolutely plummets to just 2.4 goals per final. Modern defenses are so much tighter, the margins are razor thin, and we see much lower scoring finals. Just look at 2010, where Spain beat the Netherlands 1-0, or 2014, where Germany beat Argentina with that exact same 1-0 scoreline. And because modern teams are so intensely structured and evenly matched, finals are increasingly ending in ties that just have to be decided by penalty shootouts. Believe it or not, the very first final decided by penalties wasn't until 1994, when Brazil and Italy played to a super tense 0-0 draw. Then, it happened again in 2006 between Italy and France, and obviously most recently in 2022 with Argentina and France. So what does this all mean? It means a staggering 37.5% of the last 8 finals have gone to a penalty shootout. It's wild. The ultimate team sport is increasingly being decided by the ultimate individual test of nerves.
All right, that brings us to Section 3. Rivalries and home advantage, the human element.
You can have all the tactical setups in the world, but at the end of the day, this is still a game played by human beings. And there is literally no better example of the human element than a bitter, historic rivalry. When it comes to World Cup finals, Argentina versus Germany stands head and shoulders above all others. These two powerhouses have clashed in the final 3 separate times. Argentina took the crown first in 1986 with a thrilling 3-2 victory. Then West Germany got their revenge in 1990, winning 1-0. And then Germany triumphed again in 2014, also by a score of 1-0. No other final matchup has occurred as often in the entire history of the sport. It's just an incredible clash of playing styles and fierce national pride.
And then, of course, there is the undeniable psychological boost of playing on your home turf. Our data shows that 6 out of the 22 tournaments were won by the host nation. Guys, that is over a quarter of all World Cups. Having tens of thousands of your own citizens roaring in the stands provides a real, measurable, historic advantage. We saw it right at the very beginning with Uruguay winning at home in 1930, Italy in 1934, England in 1966, all the way up to France lifting the trophy in Paris in 1998 by absolutely crushing Brazil 3-0. The home advantage? Yeah, it's very real.
Which brings us to Section 4, the greatest final ever, breaking down 2022. Let's bring the timeline right up to the present day to analyze a game that totally defied modern tactical trends. Remember that number from the beginning of our explainer? 6? Well, here we go. In an era where finals average a tight 2.4 goals, the 2022 showdown between Argentina and France delivered an unbelievable 6 goals in normal and extra time. It resulted in a breathtaking 3-3 draw before Argentina finally won 4-2 on penalties. It completely bucked that historical trend of low-scoring modern finals. It was an absolute roller coaster. And the individual performances were just as anomalous as the final score. The data here is genuinely staggering. France's Kylian Mbappé scored a historic hat trick, 3 goals in the biggest match on earth. To put that into perspective for you, the only other player to ever do that in a final was England's Geoff Hurst way back in 1966. And even more incredibly, Mbappé became the first player ever to score 2 extra-time goals in a single final. It was a completely unique, record-setting individual performance that added so much unbelievable color to the raw data of that 3-3 draw.
But that 2022 victory was monumental for another reason entirely: the timeline of droughts. See, Argentina's win finally ended a massive 36-year wait, stretching all the way back to their 1986 victory. Compare that to England, who, as we know, have been waiting for a second title since 1966. On the flip side, you have teams like France, who experienced a relatively short 20-year gap between their first title in 1998 and their second in 2018. The pure, unadulterated relief of ending a multi-decade drought is a massive part of what makes these finals so emotionally charged for the fans.
And finally, Section 5, the ultimate power index, ranking the greats. So, we've looked at the raw win totals, the rivalries, the goals, but how do we definitively rank these historical powerhouses once and for all? Well, to do this, analysts use a really simple but highly effective methodology called the World Cup Power Index. It works like this. A country is awarded 3 points for winning the title and 1 point for finishing as a runner-up. It rewards the ultimate glory of winning the whole shebang, but it still acknowledges the sheer consistency required to even make it to the final match. So let's crunch the numbers. And the results brilliantly illustrate the true historical hierarchy of the sport. Brazil takes the number 1 spot with 17 points, just barely edging out Germany's incredible consistency at 16 points. Italy sits at a solid 3rd with 14 points, and Argentina takes 4th with 12 points. But consider France at number 5 with 8 points. Now, given that France only made their first final in 1998, they are rapidly closing the gap in the modern era. They're challenging the old guard at an absolutely unprecedented pace.
So we've broken down the historic dominance of Brazil and Germany, the massive shift toward tighter tactical games and penalty shootouts, the very real power of home advantage, and the record-breaking anomalies of 2022. The patterns are all laid out right in front of you, but the beautiful thing about data is how we can use it to look forward. Based on everything you've seen today, the rising trends, the power index, the historical rivalries, who do you think will take the crown in 2026? Apply these patterns, watch those qualifiers, and let's see if the numbers actually predict the next champion. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep learning.